It always starts small. That's the part people don't warn you about. Nobody wakes up one morning and decides to disrespect you outright. It creeps in quietly, disguised as convenience, wrapped in just a second, delivered with that casual tone like you're the weird one for even noticing. And in my case, it started with a truck. Parked in my driveway. Not halfway, not accidentally crossing a line. I mean fully planted, like it belonged there, like my property had somehow become a public loading zone overnight. Now I've lived in this house for a little over 10 years. Same address, same routine, same clean-cut boundaries. I'm not one of those guys who argues with neighbors over inches of grass or where the trash bin sits. I keep to myself, I respect people's space, and I expect the same in return. Simple trade. You don't mess with my property, I don't mess with yours. That's the unspoken contract of suburban life. So when I pulled in one afternoon and saw that gray pickup sitting dead center in my driveway, yeah, it stood out. At first I thought maybe it was a delivery, maybe someone got confused, maybe it'd be gone in a minute. But then a minute turned into 5, 5 turned into 10, and now I'm sitting there in my own car, engine running, staring at someone else's vehicle like I'm the one who doesn't belong. So I parked behind it, not aggressively, just intentionally. Enough to say, hey, we need to talk. About 15 minutes later, out walks this kid, early 20s, hoodie, phone in hand, moving like the world is on pause until he's ready. He sees me, sees the situation, and instead of apologizing, he smirks. Not a big one, just enough to let you know he's not taking this seriously. Hey man, relax, he says. Unlocking the truck like this is all completely normal. I was only inside for a second. A second. I remember thinking, man, if that's your definition of a second, I'd hate to see what you call a quick trip. But I didn't say that. I kept it cool, told him straight. I need you to not park here again. This is my driveway. He nods, gives me that half-listening look people give when they're already done with the conversation, gets in, and drives off. And honestly, I let it go. Because people mess up sometimes, right? Maybe he didn't think it through. Maybe it won't happen again. Yeah, no. 2 days later, same truck, same spot, same exact time. Like we never had that conversation at all. And that's when it stops being a mistake and starts becoming a choice. So this time, I didn't wait. I walked next door. Now the neighbor, we'll call him Darren, opens the door, and you can already tell the vibe. He's got that look, like he's been interrupted from something more important, even though he's just standing there in gym shorts holding a TV remote. I explain it calmly, no attitude, just facts. Hey, your son's been parking in my driveway. I already spoke to him. I just need that to stop. And this guy doesn't even blink. Just leans on the doorframe and goes. He's not hurting anything. It's not a big deal. That right there. That sentence tells you everything you need to know about how this is going to go. Because what he's really saying isn't, it's not a big deal. What he's saying is, it's not a big deal to me. And those are two very different things. I try one more time, keep it respectful. It is a big deal to me. I need access to my driveway. He shrugs. Actually shrugs. You're making it a bigger issue than it needs to be. And there it is. That little flip. Suddenly I'm the problem. Not the truck in my driveway me. I just nodded, said, all right, and walked away. Because here's something I've learned. Once someone decides your boundary is optional, no amount of explaining is going to fix that. You're not dealing with misunderstanding anymore. You're dealing with mindset. And Darren? He had already made up his mind. See, later on I found out there was a little more going on under the surface. My driveway is wider than most on the street, easier to pull into, easier to back out of, especially if you're in a hurry. The street parking around here gets tight during the day, and instead of dealing with that like everyone else, they decided my driveway was the convenient alternative. Not officially, of course. Not something they'd ever admit. But in their heads, it made sense. And that's the dangerous part. Because once someone justifies something like that, once they convince themselves it's harmless, they stop asking for permission. They just take. So yeah, that was the moment I stopped trying to win the argument and started thinking about how to end it. I'm not loud. I'm not confrontational. I don't go back and forth yelling across fences or recording people on my phone for drama. That's not my style. But I am patient, and I pay attention. So that night, I sat down and did something most people don't bother doing. I looked up the actual rules. Not what Darren thinks is okay, not what his son feels like doing, the real, enforceable rules. I called the city's non-emergency line, kept it simple, What happens if someone blocks a private driveway? No hesitation on their end. It's a towable violation. No warning required. No grace period. No, have you tried talking to them first? Just tow. And I remember leaning back in my chair thinking, okay, so this isn't about opinions anymore. This is about choices. I asked for the ordinance number, wrote it down, saved it in my phone. Then I called a licensed tow company, got their direct line, saved that too. Labeled it something real simple, driveway. Because I had a feeling this situation wasn't done testing me yet. And sure enough, the following week, same time, same routine, that gray pickup shows up again. Slides right into my driveway like it's pulling into a reserved spot at a hotel. No hesitation this time. No second guessing. I pulled out my phone, tapped that contact, and made the call. And right there, without raising my voice, without knocking on a single door, everything changed. All right, let's slow this down for a second, because if you're watching this thinking, man, that escalated fast. I get it. It feels like it went from zero to tow truck real quick. But here's the thing most people don't realize. According to standard procedure, blocking a private residential driveway is one of those violations cities don't play around with. It's not like parking a little too close to a curb or overstaying a meter. This falls under obstruction of access. In plain English, you're interfering with someone's ability to use their own property. And from a legal perspective, that gives the homeowner immediate authority to have the vehicle removed. No warning required, no obligation to go knock, no neighbor courtesy clause written into the law. Now here's where it gets deeper. This is a psychological trap a lot of people fall into, especially in quiet neighborhoods. When someone gets away with a small boundary violation once, and nothing happens, their brain starts adjusting the rule. It goes from, I probably shouldn't do this, to it's not a big deal. And once that shift happens, every future decision is built on that new assumption. Darren wasn't just ignoring me. He was reinforcing that mindset. By dismissing it, by calling it not a big deal, he was basically rewriting the rule in real time. And when two people are operating under completely different rules, conversations stop working. At that point, the only thing that resets the situation is consequence. So I made the call, and the moment I hung up, everything got real quiet. You ever notice that? When you finally decide to stop tolerating something, there's this weird calm that hits, like your brain already accepted what's about to happen before it actually does. I wasn't pacing, I wasn't second-guessing, I just stood there in my driveway looking at that truck like, yeah, you picked the wrong spot today. The tow truck rolled in about 20 minutes later, no lights, no drama, just business. Driver hops out, mid-40s, sunburned arms, the kind of guy who's seen every version of this situation play out. I walk up, point to the truck, he nods once, no questions asked. That's when you know you're not doing anything unusual. You're just the next address on a very familiar list. He hooks it up quick, smooth, efficient, chains tighten, lift goes up, tires leave the ground, and just like that, the truck that had been treating my driveway like a free parking pass is suddenly cargo. No announcement, no warning, no second chance. Just gone. And I'm not gonna lie, there was a moment, maybe half a second, where I thought, all right, this is either going to fix everything or make things real interesting. Turns out it did both. About 30, maybe 40 minutes later, Darren comes out of his house. At first, he's just looking around, confused, like something isn't where it's supposed to be. Then it hits him. He looks at my driveway, looks back at his empty curb, and then he locks eyes with me standing on my porch. And you can see it, that exact moment where confusion turns into anger. He doesn't walk over. He storms. Fast, heavy steps, already talking before he even gets close. Where's the truck? Now I could have dragged that out, could have played dumb, but honestly, I didn't need to. It got towed. That was it. Simple. Clean. And man, that set him off. Are you kidding me right now? You had it towed? What is wrong with you? I just stood there, hands in my pockets, calm. Because here's the thing. When someone expects a reaction and doesn't get one, it throws them off way more than yelling ever could. You could have knocked, he snaps. And I just looked at him and said, I did. Twice. And that line, it landed. You could see it. Not because he agreed, but because he didn't have a response ready. That script he was running, the one where I'm the unreasonable neighbor, it didn't account for receipts. He exhales hard, shakes his head, mutters something like, this is unbelievable, and walks off. No apology, No acknowledgement, just frustration with nowhere to go. Later that day, I find out the cost. $280 to get the truck out of impound. Not cheap, but not catastrophic. Just enough to make you stop and think, was that worth it? And for a while, it looked like maybe the answer was no. 3 weeks go by, nothing happens. No truck in my driveway, no weird interactions, no passive-aggressive comments over the fence. Everything goes back to normal, and I remember thinking, all right, maybe that was the line. Maybe that's all it took. But here's the thing about people who operate on convenience. They don't change permanently. They adjust temporarily. And sure enough, one Thursday afternoon, I pull up earlier than usual, and there it is again. Same truck, same spot. Like the last 3 weeks were just a break, not a lesson. But this time, it's worse, because now I'm blocked in. Completely. I pull up behind it, engine idling, just staring. And I'm not even mad at first. I'm just trying to understand the logic. Like, you already paid $280 for this exact mistake. What part of that translated into let's run it back? I check the time. 5 minutes. 10. 20. No movement. No urgency. 30 minutes turns into 45, and now I'm officially stuck. Can't leave, can't go anywhere, just sitting there in my own driveway like I'm waiting for permission to use my own property. And that's when it clicks. This isn't forgetfulness. This isn't carelessness. This is priority. And my property isn't one of them. So I don't knock. I don't text. I don't walk next door. Because we already tried that version of the story, and it didn't work. I reach for my phone, tap that same contact, and make the call again. And this time, no hesitation at all. No internal debate. No, maybe I should. Nothing. Just action. The tow truck shows up again, same driver actually. He gives me a look like, round 2. I just nod. He doesn't say anything else. Doesn't need to. Hook, lift gone. But here's where things take a turn I didn't even plan for. Because this time, they didn't go get it right away. I don't know if Darren thought it would somehow undo itself, or if he was trying to prove a point, or maybe he just didn't want to admit what happened, but the truck sat in that impound lot overnight. And overnight, that's when fees stack up. Storage fees, late release fees, administrative charges, all those little numbers that don't matter individually, but add up real fast when you ignore them. By the next morning, the total had jumped to over $300. Now we're not talking about a minor inconvenience anymore. Now it's starting to feel like a pattern with consequences. And instead of stepping back, Darren pushes forward. He files a complaint with the city, tries to dispute the tow, claims it was excessive, unnecessary, that I didn't give proper warning. Basically anything he can throw at the situation to flip it around. And on paper, that might sound like a solid move. Fight it, challenge it, maybe get the fee reduced. Except, that's not how these things work. Because when you bring the city into it, they don't just look at your complaint. They look at everything. And during that review, they notice something. Multiple instances of that same truck partially blocking the sidewalk. Not fully in the driveway, not fully on the street. Just enough to cut off pedestrian access. The kind of thing people ignore day to day until someone official starts paying attention. And once they saw it, they documented it. Twice. 2 separate violations. Total? Around $400. And just like that, what started as it's not a big deal turned into over $1,000 in consequences. No arguments. No opinions. Just citations and a bill. After that, silence. No more comments. No more attitude. No more trying to justify it. Darren didn't say another word to me about the driveway. Not because he suddenly respected it, but because the situation had moved beyond opinion. And his son. Yeah, he figured it out real quick. From that point on, that truck stayed on the street. Sometimes farther down, sometimes circling for a spot, sometimes clearly inconvenient, but never in my driveway again. Not once. And the wild part? I didn't yell. I didn't threaten. I didn't escalate emotionally. I just followed through. So what do you actually take away from something like this? Because on the surface, it sounds like a simple neighborhood dispute. Guy parks where he shouldn't, gets towed, end of story. But if you really look at it, that's not what this was about at all. The lesson here is boundaries don't exist in what you say, they exist in what you enforce. You can explain something perfectly, you can stay calm, respectful, reasonable. All the things we're told make us good neighbors. But if there's no follow-through, then what you're really offering isn't a boundary, it's a suggestion. And suggestions? They're optional. That's exactly how this situation evolved. The first time, it was framed as harmless. The second time, it was dismissed. And by the third time, it wasn't even up for discussion anymore. It had become routine. This is a psychological trap people fall into all the time. You assume the other person is operating with the same understanding of fairness that you are. You think, if I just explain it clearly enough, they'll get it. But that only works when both sides actually respect the same rules. And when they don't, you're not having a conversation, you're negotiating your own boundaries down. That's the part that's hard to accept, because nobody likes being seen as the difficult one. Nobody enjoys making that call or being the reason someone else gets hit with a fee. It feels uncomfortable, almost like you're escalating things unnecessarily. But here's the shift that changes everything. You're not escalating the situation, you're removing yourself from it. According to standard procedure, the system is already in place. The rule exists whether you enforce it or not. The tow company doesn't care about your feelings, the city doesn't care about neighborhood dynamics. They just apply the rule. From a legal perspective, that's actually what makes it fair. There's no bias, no emotion, no back and forth debate on someone's front porch. Just action and consequence. And yeah, the consequence in this case was expensive. Over $1,000 by the time everything played out. But here's the uncomfortable truth. That cost didn't come from me. It didn't come from one phone call. It came from repeated decisions to ignore a clear boundary. The tow was just the moment those decisions finally had weight. And if I'm being honest, if I had kept knocking, kept warning, kept trying to handle it nicely, I would have taught them something too. I would have taught them that my time is flexible, that my space is negotiable, that persistence beats boundaries. And once someone learns that, they don't stop. So no, this wasn't about a driveway. It was about what happens when someone quietly decides your property is less important than their convenience and what you choose to do about it. Because at the end of the day, everyone has a line. The only difference is whether people can see it or step over it without consequence. So now I'm curious, and I mean this genuinely. At what point would you have stopped knocking and just made the call?